Hello there, Mr. Sutton here, bringing you the IM3 Honors Chapter 7 Quiz 3 Review Solutions on Graphing Trig Functions.
To write the equation for this graph, we have to pick a function. So I'm going to start with sine. Here's the general formula for that. A sine b of x minus h plus k. And then we just have to plug in the a, b, h, and k here. And I'll also do a version for cosine. So for a, the amplitude, we need half the height of this function. So that's top y value minus bottom. So that's going to be 2 minus negative 2 over 2. So 2 plus 2 over 2 gives me just 4 over 2, or 2. For the b value, first I need the period, which I can read off the graph. So how long does it take the cycle to repeat? We're going from bottom to bottom here, from negative 3 pi to 5 pi. That's a distance of 8 pi for the period. So the b value is going to be 2 pi divided by whatever the period is, divided by 8 pi. So that reduces to 1/4. Now for the h value, that's going to be, for the sine wave, the x value where I see the middle of the wave going up. So here's one such spot where that happens, middle going up, and that's at negative pi. Now for the k value, that's going to be the midline. That's going to be the average of the top and the bottom. And it looks like it's the x-axis here, but just to be on the safe side, if we do 2 plus negative 2 divided by 2, that's going to be 0 over 2, which is 0. Plugging all that into my formula, I've got y equals my amplitude of 2, sine of 1/4, x minus negative pi, so x plus pi, and then plus an invisible 0 that I don't have to write. Now, if I do all this for the cosine function instead, there we go, the cosine function, everything's going to be the same except for the h value. So a, b, and k, which I already found before, it's the same identical work that I had on that last slide. For the h value, now I need the x value where I see the top of the wave. And there's two candidates, but I like this one the best. I can see it pretty clearly is happening at pi. So that's my new h value using cosine. And then plugging all that in, I've got, let's see here, an amplitude of 2. We now should have cosine of 1/4 and x minus pi, the new h value. And then we still have that k value of plus 0 that we don't have to write. To write an equation for this graph, let's start by picking a function. You could go either sine or cosine, and I'll show you both. But let's start with sine. So a sine of b of x minus h plus k. Let's go ahead and find our a value. That's the amplitude, half the height. So top minus bottom y value divided by 2. Top y value here, it looks like it's 1.5. The bottom we have 0.5. So 1.5 minus 0.5 over 2. That's going to be 1/2 for the amplitude. Now for the b value, first I need the period, the p value, how long it takes for this thing to repeat. So it looks like if I look at the y-axis here, we're at the middle of the wave going up. And then over here at pi over 2, we're at that same spot on the wave. So pi over 2 then is our period. The b value is going to be 2 pi over that period. So same change flip, we're really doing 2 pi times 2 over pi. Pi's cancel, leaving me with 4 for that b value. Now for h, that's the x value where cosine, or actually sine in this case, is starting. So sine likes to start at the middle of the wave going up. So I have to find the x value where we have middle of the wave going up. And there's lots of places where that happens on the graph they gave us. But if we look on the y-axis here, that is actually middle of the wave going up. So that works out very nicely. So we can say we have an h value then of 0. You also could have used pi over 2 or pi, any of those middle going up spots. And now for the k value, that's the midline. That's the average of the top and the bottom. So that's 1.5 plus 0.5 over 2. And let's see, that's 2 over 2, which is just 1. So that's the midline is y equals 1 there. All right, plugging all that stuff in, we have y equals our a value of 1/2 times sine of 4, that's our b value, and we have x minus 0. So we can write that, or we can just write x, and that's fine, plus my k value of 1. Now, if I want to do all this again using cosine instead of sine, the a, the b, and the k are all going to be the same, so all those calculations are exactly the same. The h value, though, now we need an x value at the top of the wave, because that's what cosine starts at, is the top of the wave. And there's lots of top of the waves to choose from. I'm just going to go with this one right here. It's the first positive one. So that's halfway between the grid lines, and the grid lines are going by pi over 4s. So half of that is a pi over 8 for that h value. So then I can write 1/2 cosine 4, and then x minus pi over 8 plus 1. All right, let's write an equation for this graph. So I'm going to go with sine first, and then I'll show you the cosine version. Either one's fine, you just need one of them. So we have our general sine formula, a sine b of x minus h plus k. For my a value, my amplitude, that's half the height. So I'll do top y value minus bottom, and then divide by 2. At the top, we've got 3. The bottom, we've got -1 for the y. So 3 minus -1, 3 plus 1 divided by 2 gives me 4 over 2, or 2. So that's how much I'm fluctuating from the midline. Now for the b value, that's going to be 2 pi over the period. For the p value, the period, what is that? So I see here that I'm going from bottom to bottom here. It takes me, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 grid lines. And it looks like each grid line is a pi over 4. So 8 times pi over 4, that's a distance of 2 pi for my period, which works out nicely because my b value is always 2 pi divided by the period. So I'm doing 2 pi over 2 pi. That's an easy one. That's just 1. Now for the h value, that's the x value where for sine, where I have the middle of the wave going up. So taking a look here, that looks like right here at this spot. That's negative pi over 4, middle of the wave going up. And then for the k value, that's going to be the midline. That's the average of the top and the bottom. So 3 plus -1 over 2, which is 2 over 2, or just 1. All right, plugging all this stuff back in, we've got my amplitude of 2 times sine of 1, so I don't have to write the invisible 1 there. We have x minus negative pi over 4, so plus pi over 4. And then this plus k is now going to be a plus 1. And if I want to do all this again using sine instead of cosine, the a, b, and k values are all the same. So everything we did to find those, we would just do the same exact stuff again. Now the h is going to change. I need the x value for the top of the wave for cosine. So the top of the wave right here, I mean there's 2 places, but this one looks easier to read. This is at pi over 4 for that h value. Let's see, pi over 4, not negative pi over 4. So positive pi over 4, and then plugging that in, we have y equals 2 times now cosine of 1 times x minus pi over 4 plus 1, k value hasn't changed. Trying to write an equation for this graph. So for that, I need to pick a trig function, write the general form, and then find some letters. Let me start with sine, and then I'll do cosine. You just need to do one of them. So we have a sine of b x minus h plus k for my general formula. And now I have to go shopping for each of these different things. For the amplitude, that's half the height. So top minus bottom y value divided by 2. So we've got 2.5 minus 1.5 over 2. That's 1/2. For the b value, I need 2 pi over the p value, the period. The period's kind of hard to pick out on this one. So what I'm going to do here, at negative pi, it looks like I'm a little bit past the top of the wave. And at pi, I'm at that same spot on the wave, a little bit past the top of the wave. So over a distance of 2 pi, how many cycles do I go? I go, let's see here, we got 1, 2, 3 cycles over a distance of 2 pi. So that means 2 pi over 3 would give me the period. And then if I do 2 pi divided by 2 pi over 3, 2 pi, which I always use, divided by the p value, same change flip, we've got 2 pi times 3 over 2 pi. 2 pi's cancel and leave me with just 3. Okay, now for the h value, I need the x value that represents middle going up for the wave, because that's where sine likes to start, is middle going up. So this is, again, kind of hard to pick out because we don't have a lot of things matching up with grid lines here. But I see a spot right here at, let's see, this would be 3 pi over 4, halfway between pi over 2 and pi, where I have middle going up. So I'm going to use that for my h value. And then for the k value, I need to average the top and the bottom to get the midline. So that's going to be 2.5 plus 1.5 over 2. So 4 over 2 gives me 2. Plugging all that in, I've got y equals my a value of 1/2 times the sine of 3. We have x minus 3 pi over 4. All of that plus my k value of 2. So that's the sine version of this. For the cosine version of this, everything is going to be the same in terms of a, p, b, and k. The h value is the only difference other than the cosine function itself. So now I need the x value that gives me the top of the wave instead of the middle going up. So top of the wave, I have a pretty clear one here at pi over 4. So I'll make that my h value. And now I've got y equals 1/2 again. Cosine of 3, that hasn't changed. But now I've got x minus pi over 4 instead of 3 pi over 4 in there. And I still have my k value of plus 2 there. To graph this cosine curve, let me start by getting the a, p, h, and k values, and then I'll do a window and put the cosine curve in that window. So for my a value, I've got this 4 coefficient out in front. For the period, that's going to be 2 pi divided by this b value of 4. So pi over 2 is what I can reduce that to if I want. For the h, that's going to be the opposite of whatever's in here with x, so negative pi over 8. And k is going to be this constant out here of negative 1. So horizontally, my graph is going to go from my h value of negative pi over 8, or at least one period of this is going to start at negative pi over 8. And then that's going to go until whatever this plus the period is. So negative pi over 8 plus pi over 2. Well, pi over 2 is really like having 4 pi over 8. So negative 1 pi plus 4 pi over 8 gives me 3 pi over 8. Now for the vertical, I need to go from k minus the amplitude to k plus the amplitude. So we have negative 1 minus 4 is negative 5. And then negative 1 plus 4 is going to give me positive 3. So here's a graph that accommodates these dimensions. So if I make my horizontal grid lines go by pi over 8s, I've got my beginning of the period here, negative pi over 8, and then 3 pi over 8 at the end with 4 kind of hash mark or y-axis marks in between. Next, vertically, I'm going from negative 5 to 3. So if I make my grid lines vertically go by 1s, I've got negative 5 down here, positive 3 up here. I've got everything I need here. Okay, so cosine, we're starting at the top of the wave. So we're starting back here at negative pi over 8 at the top, which is positive 3 for the y value. And then for every step I take, I go down or up whatever the amplitude is. So one step to the right, we're going down 4 here to the midline of negative 1. And then another step, we're going down again to the bottom of the wave down at negative 5. Taking another step, now I have to go up. And I just keep going up until I get to the top of the wave. And then I draw my cosine curve through those points. Let me go ahead and sketch the graph now for this sine curve. So for this, let me first get my amplitude, period, h, and k, my shifts for the horizontal and vertical. So for amplitude, I've got this 8 out in front. For the period, I have to do 2 pi divided by this b value of pi over 2. So that's really 2 pi times 2 over pi, same change flip. Pi's cancel, I've got 2 times 2, which is 4. Next, my h value is the opposite of whatever I see in here, so negative 1. And then negative 8, this constant, gives me the k. Horizontally, I'm going from the h value of negative 1 for the x values here to whatever h plus the period is. So negative 1 plus 4 gives me 3. Vertically, I'm going from k minus the amplitude, so negative 8 minus 8, negative 16, to k plus the amplitude. Negative 8 plus 8 is 0. There we go. All right, so a graph that accommodates all of this. If I make my horizontal grid lines go by 1s, then I can go from negative 1 to positive 3. And vertically, if I make my grid lines go by eighths, then I can go from 0 down to negative 16. So we have negative 1 here, positive 3 here, and then I'll just use negative 8. I just need to label one of the grid lines if they're all going by the same amounts. So for sine, we're starting in the middle of the wave going up. So we start back here at the x value negative 1, and middle of the wave is this midline of negative 8. It's our k value. So that's right here. Going up, we're going to take one step to the right, and we're going up the amplitude up to the top of the wave at 0. Since we're at the top, we have to go back down, and then down again until we get to the bottom of the wave. And then finally, we're going to go back up again to the midline, and then draw the curve through those points. To graph this sine curve, let me get a few attributes, and then I'll get a horizontal and vertical window to help me at least draw my axes. So for the amplitude, I've got this 4 out in front. That tells me how much I'm going up and down from the middle. For the p-value, the period, I have 2 pi divided by my b value of 1/4. So that's really like multiplying 2 pi by 4, which gives me 8 pi. Then for the h value, I've got the opposite of whatever's in this parentheses, so positive 2 pi. And then for the k value, I've got whatever this constant is, so negative 2. Horizontally, I'm going from my h value of 2 pi to the h value plus the period, so 2 pi plus 8 pi gives me 10 pi. And then vertically, I'm going from k minus the amplitude, so negative 2 minus 4, negative 6, to k plus the amplitude. So that's positive 2. Positive 2. All right, let's go ahead and sketch that. So horizontally, I need to go from 2 pi to 10 pi and have 4 kind of hash marks that I can use for my different phases. So if I make my grid lines go by 2 pi's like I have here, I accomplish that nicely. Vertically, if I make my grid lines go by 2's, then I can go from negative 6 down here to positive 2 up here. So for sine, I have to start in the middle of the wave going up. Middle of the wave is going to be negative 2 for the y value, and for the x value, we're starting at 2 pi. So we're going 2 pi, negative 2 right here. And now for every step I take to the right, I'm just going to go up or down whatever this amplitude of 4 is. So I have to start by going up because it's a positive sine curve, sine up. So up here, and then taking a step to the right. We're at the top of the wave now. We have to go back down, and then down again. Since we're now at the bottom of the wave at negative 6, we have to bounce back up to the midline, and then draw the curve through those. And it looks kind of weird, but we only had to draw one period for this one. We do know that it does go forever in a sine sort of fashion, but we just drew a single period, so we're done. Alrighty, let's take a shot at drawing this cosine curve. We'll start by getting the amplitude, period, and the horizontal and midline shifts, the h and the k values. So for a, that's the coefficient out here, this 2. For the period, I've got 2 pi divided by this b value of 1/2. So that's really 2 pi times 2, which gives me 4 pi. The h value is just the opposite of whatever I see in this parentheses here. So that's going to be positive pi. And for the k value, I've got 2 for this plus 2 here. So horizontally, I'm going from my h value of pi 1 period to the right. So that's going to be the x value, whatever pi plus 4 pi is, so 5 pi. And then for the vertical window, I need to go from the midline, I need to go down the amplitude and up the amplitude. So we have 2 minus 2, k minus a is 0. And then 2 plus 2, k plus a gives me 4. Here's what that looks like in terms of grid lines. So if I make my horizontal grid lines go by pi's, I've got a pi here, and then just skipping ahead, I have a 5 pi over here. And that gives me 4 nice little phases that I can break my wave into. For the y values, I need to go from 0 to 4. So if I make my grid lines go by 2's, I've got 0 and 4 represented on there. For cosine, I'm starting at the top of the curve. So here at my first value that I have to graph at the h value here, I'm at the top, so that's y value of 4. And then every step I take, I'm going up or down, whatever the amplitude is. Since I'm at the top, I can only go down, so I'm down to the midline, and then down 2 again to the bottom value that we said we had vertically. Now I have to bounce back up to the midline and keep going until I reach the top of the wave again over here at 5 pi. And then I just draw the cosine curve through those points, and I am done.